Crossroads. All right, so last week we talked about the Casey and Vicky White case, which is just absolutely mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. There have been some new details that have come out about it, right?
Oh, I haven't read any because I've been going to work.
Okay. Come to find out, the only detail that I remember is that Vicky White decided, instead of that gunshot that went off, it wasn't accidental. It was on purpose. Crazy. Because she didn't want to face everything that she did. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. That is not at all what we're here to talk about today. But I did want to talk about what we did on our anniversary. So obviously, we had videotaped our very first episode and got that posted the day after our anniversary because we missed the deadline. And then for the rest of the day, we just spent time with the family. We went out to dinner to Chili's, our very first date. It's actually
our first date spot.
Yep. The very first place that we ever physically met as our very first date was over after that. And we'll talk about how we met and all that fun jazz another time. Maybe not today. So, without further ado, what we're actually going to be talking about today is the food that built America. The food that built America. So, Chris, when you think about the food that built America, what are some of the brands that automatically come to mind? Think about the brands that just started.
Definitely for me, I think of yummy candy like Hershey's and Reese's and Milky Way and all those great yummy foods that aren't foods.
Candy. You think of candy.
Yes, they built my America. All right. I'm a 90s kid.
All right. Well, when you think of American food.
Oh, no. There's all kinds of good brands like Campbell's and Coca-Cola and Pepsi and...
But then you think of picnics, hot dogs, hamburgers, ketchup, 4th of July.
Yeah, you got Heinz. And then who makes hot dogs? What brand makes Wantley?
Actually, so if you go on to Hulu and look up the foods that built America, I believe that this was filmed back in 2018. There's only 2 seasons up, but it's so interesting.
It is.
Because when you think about businesses, obviously there's drama everywhere that you work, right? But when you go to start a business, there is a lot of drama that goes into it, even with families, especially with families.
Oh, yeah.
There is a lot of drama that goes into that. I mean, I'm pretty sure anybody that's watched that show Scandal, it's a lot of drama. So we're going to start off with the beginning, actually. So let's start off talking about Hershey. The man himself, Milton Hershey. This was back in the early 1800s when, this was before anything. What was it? 1800s that was World War I, right? World War One. This was around World War I remember. It was around World War I. Milton Hershey was absolutely obsessed with coming up with his own recipe for chocolate bars, because there was chocolate out on the market. Candy was not an unknown thing. Candy has been around for years and years and years and years and years. Who knows? It could have been around, back when there were Neanderthals. I don't know. But
rock candy.
Yeah, rock candy. Rock candy. Anyway, so Milton Hershey was actually obsessed with trying to come up with his own version of milk chocolate. It was something that even Europeans weren't doing. When chocolate first was actually introduced, it was dark chocolate. It was semi-sweet.
Yeah.
It wasn't as delicious as we thought it was today. And this man, let me tell you, you've heard the story about Walt Disney failing over and over and over and over until he finally became successful. The one commonality between everybody that we're going to talk about today is they all failed.
Yep.
Horribly. I mean, terribly. Awfully.
Or took major risks.
Well, I mean, that's what they did. They had to take major, major risks just to become successful. But they never gave up the tenacity to want to be at the top and to have that product that's going to take the nation by storm. That was something that was very consistent with all of the people that we're going to be talking about. So Milton Hershey starts off with just making regular, candy bars and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then he actually had hired multiple scientists, because if you think about it, it's all science. Food is all science, right? He had hired a scientist to try to find a way to make the correct recipe, the perfect recipe that was going to create Hershey's milk chocolate. The scientist, who I forgot his name, fail. But the scientist worked day and night with Milton Hershey. He was a control freak. He had to be involved in everything.
Right.
Everything. So he stayed up day and night, and it took like a total of 3 to 6 months to actually create the recipe that became the official milk chocolate Hershey's bar. That ended up turning into over $1 billion industry as soon as it had hit the shelves and Milton had figured out the perfect recipe to Hershey's. This actually started a huge era in the candy making world, because shortly after Hershey, any other candy makers that wanted to be successful, who do you think that they were going to for their supplier?
Hershey.
Hershey became the supplier. And what Milton Hershey didn't realize is with him turning into the supplier of having this perfect chocolate, actually created some of his biggest competitors that outdid him in sales at one point in time.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. The first candy maker to actually go up against Hershey's and also using them as their supplier was the Mars bar, was the Mars family. You actually had, I think it was a son and a dad.
Yeah, and they had the big idea to make a candy bar that tasted like malt chocolate or something.
Yep. That was actually one of the very first recipes that they decided to put together, put on the market, is they were drinking a malt milkshake.
Right.
And they were like, you know what? Let's turn some of this chocolate into like a malt flavor, turn it into a chocolate bar. And that is actually how they had come up with the Milky Way.
Yeah. Oh, and then they figured out if you whipped it the right amount of times, the stuff in the middle would fill with air and be fluffy, which was cheaper to make and distribute, and also made the candy bar unique.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So the Mars bar, or the Mars family, ended up taking off. They took off like a rocket as soon as they came out with the Milky Way. And then you also have Reese's. So Mr. William Reese himself, I know that's your favorite. Who doesn't like Reese's? Mr. William Reese himself was actually working on a project, working for Milton Hershey. And there was a sign of the times where sales were really down. There was a recession that was starting. I think this is around the time that the Depression had actually just started. And even though people were trying to pinch their pennies and they weren't making a lot of money, they were actually going through a lot of what we are getting ready to go into right now, which is a huge recession. People were still buying chocolate because at the end of the day, chocolate releases endorphins, that releases, happiness. And, it makes things that are difficult a little bit easier to deal with. Just a little bit of chocolate's going to bring some happiness. I know it works for me. So, William Reese had already had the chance to get to know all of the recipes. He knew a lot about Hershey and their secrets. He knew a lot.
All the stuff.
And he was already actually experimenting with a lot of different candies. So at this point, what he decided to do was just try to find different ways to make something that was super unique. And it's funny because he was sitting at breakfast with his son one morning with a jar of peanut butter sitting in front of him. And here, this was, mid-1800s, early 1900s at this point, by the way.
Right.
But peanut butter had not hit the shelves and hit families to the extreme that it is today. Peanut butter wasn't a staple. It was like a peasant food. It was a peasant food. So what Mr. Reese decided to do is he decided to start roasting his own peanuts. And when he roasted his own peanuts, he started to make his own peanut butter. And it was all about finding the right recipe, that right mixture for that peanut butter to make the candy bar that he ultimately wanted. So he had also hired like a chef. Actually, yes, it was a chef. It was it was a professional like candy maker or a chef or something like that. He had done a lot of work with food, and the man had over roasted the peanuts. And when he had tasted it, he goes, "Man, I don't think this is going to be any good.
Right.
They taste burnt." William Reese said, "Nope, this is perfect. This is perfect."
Voila.
And then the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup was born. And he started mass producing. He gave everything that he had in his savings. Everything in his savings went into mass producing these peanut butter cups. Something that you're going to hear consistently clear across the board is that every single inventor of every single thing that we love to eat today, they gave every single penny and took some really big risks and put everything into these factories into mass producing. And that's just completely admirable. That's totally admirable because money was like scarce. It was nothing back then. So, Hershey eventually starts to pick up on all the news around the peanut butter cup, and he got smart. He said, "You know what? I want a piece of this success. I want a piece of this success." So he actually reached back out to Mr. Reese and said, "You know what? I'm going to let you keep your peanut butter cup. However, what you're going to do for me is I'm going to be your only supplier. I'm going to get a piece of this."
Yep.
So what they didn't realize is just how much more money Reese's was actually going to end up making over Hershey's at the time, and became their largest competitor, but also their largest partner. So Reese's Peanut Butter Cups were born, and that started that. So I thought that was pretty interesting about the candy makers. There's so much more to talk about with different candy makers, such as, the makers of Butterfinger, Yeah, that was made, completely by accident too. There's a lot of things that actually took off completely by accident.
Yep. Apparently, wasn't it, which one accidentally figured out like pasteurizing, or got a hint of pasteurizing milk by someone putting a milk in a container and it just got heated and then it separated, and they learned about separating like milk fats and stuff like that.
Yes, that was
they were like riding on a horse and it was hot outside or something, right?
Yeah, this was definitely back in like the middle 1800s, early 1900s for sure.
Yeah.
I believe that was actually from the makers of, actually I think that was the makers of Butterfinger.
Was it? I don't remember why. Or no, you know what? It was the people that wanted to was it Kraft? Because they wanted to be able to transport cheese better.
You are correct. Actually, thank you for jogging my memory. So what Chris is actually talking about during one, this was in season 2, is the makers of Kraft cheese. So Kraft cheese was actually the very first cheese maker for processed cheese in the United States, period. And the purpose of this to try to make it manufactured was so that it would last a lot longer, but also so that they could support the troops and provide them with something that's edible, provides protein, and lasts a long time, especially while they were out there doing what they had to do to support, fighting our country and wars and everything like that. So Kraft wanted to try to find another way to have it a whole lot safer for their canning processes, for their packaging, for preservatives, in how to separate the milk fats and everything, so that when they go to make their product, it doesn't separate, it actually stays together all whole.
Yeah, so they learned, I guess through testing and that thing I talked about where some man put milk into a container. Through something that he read about doing that, he figured out that if you bring the milk up to a certain temperature and hold that temperature for a specific amount of time, it creates a situation in which the milk will last longer because it kills most of the bacteria in the milk.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, so then you can dehydrate it, I guess, and make it last longer. I'm not really sure.
And people back in this is, again, 1900s. They figured this out back in the 1900s with just beakers and flames and just paying really close attention. And we rely a lot on technology to do a lot of this stuff for us now. But it's pretty amazing when you are super incredibly determined to try to make something work. That's incredible. So the era of the 1800s going into the early 1900s, that whole decade, right, was all about innovation and invention and, mass producing and factories and all of that stuff. That's really what skyrocketed, really what our American culture is today, was trying to find easier ways to make things, to sell it for a profit and still trying to make it affordable for Americans. Well, this actually goes to show just how undercut and how cutthroat this era was. So, we'll take musical artists, for example, right? Kanye West hates Taylor Swift. They're both successful. But Kanye West will do whatever it takes to undertake Taylor Swift. And then Taylor Swift is going to be, the underdog that still ends up coming out on top without feeling the need to attack Kanye West, directly. That's kind of how it was in the food industry. So in the food industry, they steal each other's ideas, make it their own, market it, and boom, now you have yourself a competitor. What Post cereal decided to do was right before that asylum caught fire and burnt to a crisp, he went into their personal filing cabinet and stole all of the recipes, the plans, the formulas, everything that they had to actually make the cereal. So Kellogg ended up coming up with a different cereal, and voila, cornflakes was created. Cornflakes was created and took off like a rocket. And that's what started the cereal wars. So, with that being said, my friends, very cutthroat. You try to start your own business. You try to come up with some great ideas. Other people find it, capitalize it. Sometimes they're smarter than you and they take off like a rocket. Some people undercut you. They steal your entire business, kick you out of it, and then you have to start all over from the bottom all over again. So the foods that built America, while we love them so much and they've done a lot and brought us a lot of memories, there's a lot of hoopla that ended up going on while, creating these businesses. So keep that in mind as you are picking your favorite brands. So next episode, who knows what we're going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about another case. We're probably going to be bringing up some old history, something that I find very interesting because it's still not solved to this day. And that would be the story of the Black Dahlia. Dun dun dun. Dun dun dun. We will be talking about the Black Dahlia, her history, what happened, where the case is today, and if investigators truly do still actually have that case open to try to find the solution to her mystery death, which is crazy. So, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I truly appreciate you. Please subscribe below. Give us some love. Give us a like. Give us a share. We would love it ever so much. And we will catch you on the next time that we have Crowley's Crossroads. Keep it creepy.